Nick Mohammed plays Nate the Great in the Emmy Award comedy series Ted Lasso. I'm Matt Noble of Gold Derby, and I wanted to kick things off by asking you, Nick, what do you believe about Ted Lasso?
Wow, that's a good question. That's quite a deep question. What do I believe about Ted Lasso? I believe that the show is a force for good, a refreshing, positive take on things when I think the world can respond very well to a show like that. And yeah, I think it's joyful, uplifting. What do I believe? Yeah, I mean, I believe that all good things come to an end at some point. Who knows whether this time around is the last time? But yeah.
Okay, very good. And you talked about like how the show is this force for good, and something that a lot of people have highlighted about the show is how encouraging it is and how uplifting it is in a very cynical world we live in. But that does not mean the characters in the show don't sometimes make dark choices, and that they don't, there isn't ever tension or conflict within the show. And that's something particularly with Nate in season 2. We got to see a real, I guess, resentment build up in him. What was it like for you to approach Nate on this journey that he went through in season 2?
Well, it was, I mean, first of all, it was something that I was aware of for quite a long time, that I knew that they had this plan for Nate. And I remember Jason particularly outlining it from quite early on when we were filming season 1. So I was aware of broadly speaking, where it was going to go. I didn't obviously know all the sort of the details at that point, but I mean, as an actor, you kind of relish the opportunity to try something new. I think I was aware that after season 1 aired, and when we were then, I guess, about sort of gearing up to filming season 2, that Nate had become fan favorite. Sounds self-aggrandizing. I guess what I mean is, I think that a lot of people could associate with the kind of the underdog does good kind of arc that Nate goes on. And it's a really strong example of the show as a whole, Nate's journey in season 1, in that he meets Ted. Ted is this force for good, and ultimately empowers him. And we see at the end of season 1 that Nate is then promoted, and it means the world to him. And that, it's quite a linear arc, but it's really nice to watch, and we feel as an audience, I think, really kind of empowered by that, and we really take that positive message home. And so obviously it then represented, it was then even a bigger fall from grace, I think, when we saw that Nate was the one suddenly sort of starting to make a lot of bad choices, and that sort of quite dark heel turn that he makes, I guess, a third to midway through season 2, and we just see things gradually spiral out of control. So I was aware that I think that audiences might respond to it in a way that was, I mean, it's correct that they felt this sort of like, this almost gut punch feel to it. But we're midway through Nate's journey, so I think it's part of a journey he's clearly had to go on. And the other thing, I mean, just from an acting point of view, it certainly wasn't in any. I mean, it was the most sort of dramatic acting I think I'd ever had to do, or emotional acting, because I think in season 1 of Ted Lasso I found like a real kind of comfort. It was a comfort area to be slightly awkward, and a lot of it was comedy, and whereas there were far fewer jokes for Nate actually in season 2 compared to season 1. A lot of it was a lot more kind of meaningful, and whether it was dialogue or just looks towards the other coaches and things, there's a lot kind of more kind of going on in Nate's head. There was a lot of kind of inner demons sort of toying him throughout season 2, and so playing that was definitely a lot more, I just found, more challenging than season 1.
Yeah. Now Nate in season 2 feels a bit on the outs and not sort of valued as much as he deserves from Ted. Do you think that is largely his perception or the reality of the situation?
I think it's I mean, the huge sort of downfall, it's all playing in Nate's head, because it all stems from the toxic relationship with his dad. I think it's quite clear that has not set Nate up very well in life for dealing with anything that is sort of remotely challenging and emotionally. And so I feel like when he says to Ted that he feels abandoned, to a degree that there is a truth to that, but only because Ted's got his own things to sort out. I mean, Ted doesn't own Nate in the way that I think Nate feels that he does. And so I think it's a culmination of, it's almost like a death by 1,000 cuts with Nate. There are a few little things that sort of chip away at his, and it's a lot to do with his ego as well. he's got new responsibility. He's getting a little bit of attention on Twitter, and all of that is sort of feeding him in not a very good way. But there's a reality to it. There's a truth to that, and particularly, not exclusively, but particularly, I think people who have been victims of bullies in the past, they then sort of feel like that's maybe the only way that they can respond once they get sort of a position of responsibility, or once they go up a few rungs of the ladder. Suddenly they start treating people the way that they were treated because it's all that they've ever known. And I'm not condoning that behavior at all, but it's certainly how Ted sort of reacts, how Nate reacts to that. And we see that with him lashing out at Colin, and then ultimately his sort of betrayal and what he then says to Ted at the end.
Yeah, and like that was such a powerful scene with Ted at the end, where he's I believe I'm remembering this incorrectly, apologizes, and Nate does not sort of respond well to that. What's it like in those powerful moments? Like, what are you trying to sort of channel, or how do you sort of, I don't know, feed off Jason in a scene like that?
Well, that scene, we knew that it was coming, and we knew that it probably had to deliver as a scene, because it's the only time that Ted and Nate are actually just together, just the two of them in the whole season, which I sort of find incredible watching back. But it's true, and the writers did such a great job of kind of just maintaining this tension. And actually, Ted is largely unaware of Nate's downfall until, I guess, the end of episode 11, when he finds out that Nate has gone to Trent, with the details about him having panic attacks and so on. And so when, it's Ted who makes the first step to confront Nate about it, actually. He says, "Oh, what's wrong?" And actually Nate says, "Oh, it's nothing, don't worry about it." But then actually Ted says, no, come on, there is something wrong. And that's when Nate just lets rip. And I don't know, it was just, we filmed it relatively quickly. I felt incredibly well supported, not least by Jason, who's obviously in the scene, but it felt like this scene meant a lot to him as well. And so we had talked a lot about it building up to it. And I'd had the script like about a week in advance anyway. And so like Jason's got this kind of great way of really getting inside your head in a really good way just before you're about to kind of act. I mean, he asked if he wanted me to do that before, and he did. And he was almost sort of talking to me as if it was sort of Nate's bad voice in head, like the bad demon inside Nate. He's like, "You're a failure, you're never going to have a relationship, you're rubbish, these people are laughing at you, don't take no for an answer." And so he was just saying this to me, so to almost like rile me up, so that when he then faced me, I was like, "Oh, what's right?" I was just really wanted to kind of lay into him. And listen, I'm not a proper trained actor, so it was kind of whatever it was going to take to kind of get us to a position where it felt real. And I think it was just very important for it to feel real, because as I say, that a lot of that season had been building up to that moment. I mean, even as early as season 1, some of those seeds are planted where Nate is a little bit like, what's going on here? But he just doesn't vocalize it. And this was the only time when we really feel like he's properly lashing out at an authority figure.
We talked about some dark stuff. Nick, what was the funniest moment for you in the second season?
Well, that is the thing, because there were fewer light-hearted moments for Nate this time around. I mean, always doing anything, because we don't have that many scenes together. Whenever I'm with Hannah, we get the giggles like a lot. And there was like there was probably like 2 interactions like I had with Hannah, and I think one was in the funeral episode, in episode 10, I think, when we're all kind of getting off the coach and we're sort of sending our apologies, saying our apologies to her, giving our condolences, sorry. And I think, I can't remember what I say, but I try and sort of, Nate tries to say, "Oh, fathers are the sort of stabilizers of life," and you need to, and then he just sort of like fizzles out because he can't really remember what the sort of thing that he was going to say. And I remember we all kind of giggling at that, because it took a few times to get through it. So that was a particularly joyful one. I mean, a lot of those scenes, with the guys in the locker room are always fun, because they're so funny and all their different personalities kind of meld together so well, kind of on screen and off screen. And so they're always joyful in terms of like having a fun day at work. Those scenes are always just a joy, regardless of what Nate is kind of meant to be going through. It's always nice to see those people.
Now, we're an awards website at Gold Derby, and Ted Lasso did very well at the Emmy Awards last year. You won the Best Comedy Series prize, really cool. I think only about 7 comedies have won that in the past 15 years. So you're in sort of exclusive and esteemed company. And I believe was that your first time in LA?
First time in America.
Wow.
I mean, it's embarrassing to say that almost, because, you know, I should have visited before then, you know, not even on holiday. And it's crazy, but yeah, it was my first time. And I was only there for like 48 hours that time because I had to come back, because I was about to do a film which did film in Albuquerque, and so I then was in America for like a lot longer, for about 6 weeks. But because that was happening about a week or so later, I felt like, well, I don't want to stay in LA for too long, so you can spend as much time with the family before I go away for like a long stint. So, but yeah, it was really surreal, because not only was I in, you know, a continent, a country that that I'd never visited before, but it was for the Emmys as well, which felt a bit mad. And, you know, there was all COVID was sort of still, you know, COVID was still doing its thing. And so it just felt very strange and surreal. And of course, yeah, wonderful that the show won, and Jason and Hannah and Brett. It was just a great night, really.
Yeah, I remember like my first time in America. It's so surreal because you've never been there before, but at the same time, you have seen so much of it on film and television and stuff. It's very surreal being there, and I can only imagine what it'd be like to be your first time there and at the Emmys for your first time there.
It was completely mad and kind of wonderful, because, you know, it genuinely means so much that there is that fans have responded. Well, you know, these people have just responded to the show so well. So, you know, even just getting to talk to some of the fans outside, and it's kind of nuts, because I'd not experienced that before either. So, but then it was nice that there were lots of friendly faces around, because, you know, all the other cast were there and so on. So yeah, it felt good, and it felt like about time in a way, because I feel like Jason and Brandon and Bill and Joe, you know, they're all from the States, and they've been, you know, spending time in Richmond, which is where I live, for so long filming Ted. That it felt like right that we should go over it and be on their home turf.
Well, no, you had a great introduction. You waited for the right time, waited to be an Emmy nominee before you came into the country.
It wasn't planned.
Yeah. You've got also the I hope though, Nick, this hasn't all gone to your head and you've now like gotten this chance to go to America, be an Emmy nominee. You're not going to be going to some other show, more.
No, I think I was very aware that there was an element of especially when the season finale of season 2 broke, and I was in America at that point doing this film, and I started like looking at Twitter, and I thought, I'm going to just come off, because actually that's exactly what Nate does in season 2 of Ted Lasso. He starts getting too obsessed with it, and so I was like, no, I'm going to have a healthy relationship with what people are saying about it. But yeah.
No, you didn't have to have a chat with Jason. Look, I'm going to some other show that's going to give me more screen time and more.
No, I'm so grateful for this show. Oh.
What is for you where does the joy come from for you in coming into work on Ted Lasso each day?
Well, we're just so lucky as actors that we're just presented with just the best scripts. I mean, like, you know, the reason why it's done so well, in my opinion, is just because the material is so good. And of course, the casting, I think, all around is great. And it genuinely is, you know, cast and crew. It's just such a great group of people who are really passionate about delivering on this show. And that was always the case, you know, even from season 1, the start of season 1, when no one had, you know, obviously everyone hopes that it's going to be good, but no one knew that it's going to have the reaction that it, you know, went on to have. So, but when you're getting to act in a show where the material's good and the stories are good, and, you know, there's opportunities for characters, you know, quite minor characters or supporting characters, to have their own journeys across the season. That was something I've not really experienced before. I mean, it's partly because in the UK, if you do a sitcom, they're 6.5 hours, and so, you know, your lead characters might go on journeys and so on. But you know, if you're part of the ensemble, it's quite rare. You're usually the constant for them to kind of be foils against. So that was just such a great, you know, that was just great. And the scripts are brilliant. The people are brilliant. I mean, we just feel so lucky. And, you know, particularly when it was the pandemic, we were like, I mean, how, by goodness, we're so lucky to be working. I mean, it was kind of nuts, really.
Like, in the first season, there's that great dart scene. People bring it up all the time. The Walt Whitman quote, "Be curious, not judgmental." What's something you've been curious about throughout the course of this sort of series and this experience of making this show?
Well, I think curious because you know, I'm a writer, not on the level that these people are, but I think the way that they have managed to, I've been really curious about how they've managed to somehow deliver on kind of comedy, drama, and emotion. Like it's a proper kind of triple threat show, and I think that those are quite rare because, often a show will not necessarily deliberately sacrifice one for the other, but often a comedy is a comedy, and the kind of the dramatic moments or the emotional moments are like, they're kind of there because it sort of feels like, oh well, we got to give the audience some sort of light and shade, but they don't always deliver. The fact that I feel Ted Lasso manages to deliver equally and from episode to episode and from character to character sort of so consistently, and be surprising and feel like it's refreshing because it's not like a snarky, cynical comedy, but as you said at the very start, it has got characters who are still troubled, and not everyone's just light and breezy and happy all the time. I just still don't know how they managed to sort of navigate that tightrope. And I'm not in the writer's room or anything, and maybe I should sort of pop in to sort of see how they do it. And I think it's they've just got such a strong leader in Jason, and obviously co-creators with Brendan and Bill and Joe. They've got such a strong idea and such a great writer's room. And now that they've got a cast who they can now write for, I mean, it's sort of the perfect storm. But I still don't know. I mean, it's somehow by committee they managed to make it all work. But it's fascinating and incredible, and I still don't quite know how they managed to do it. And there's some of the stuff that I'm reading for season 3, and the scripts are brilliant. And obviously, I can't talk about the details, but even within scenes, they managed to deliver on the laughs and the emotion, and then do like a punchline or a payoff that is completely unexpected. And it's that kind of keeps you kind of hooked, and it keeps the characters real as well. So yeah, they're just, it's the writing really that I'm curious about. I'm like, how do they do it, Dan?
And finally, Nick, who is your favorite member of the crew?
Favorite member of the crew? That's a good question. Goodness me, I really like Emma and Andy on sound. They're really cool. They're a couple, and they are really nice and great and make everything really straightforward. Often, not often, it sounds rude to say, but sometimes like sound can be a really tricky thing. I mumble loads as Nate, and I play it very, very quietly because I really try and make it sort of naturalistic, and I mumble and I sort of shuffle around, and it feels true to the character. Often I've done that on other shows or that similar thing, and sound have been like, no, you're going to need to pitch right up, or and you can't sort that quietly, or you can't do it. And actually they're like, we'll sort it out, you leave it to us. And so I don't know, that's quite a specific thing to say, but yeah, I felt very supported. I mean, all the crew are great, but yeah.
Yeah, well, I spoke with Brandon Hunt earlier today. So what's a question I should ask everyone that I'm speaking to? And he said, favorite member of the crew and why? That's what. So that was courtesy of Brandon Hunt.
It's a good one. Good.
Yeah.
A good question. Well, yeah, Andy and Emma from sound.
There you go. Nick, thank you so much for talking with us today. People watching this interview can go to goldderby.com to make your awards predictions and watch other interviews with awards contenders. And Nick, all the best of luck for the Emmy Awards for season 2 of the show that's coming up soon.
Thank you. Thank you, Al. That's very kind. Thank you very much.